Picture this, a hollow metal cylinder, 9 meters wide, 50 meters tall, floating silently 250 miles above your head. No engines firing, no crew aboard yet, just sitting there in orbit, waiting. That is not science fiction. That is the plan. SpaceX wants to take the largest rocket ever built, fly it into orbit, and instead of bringing it back, just leave it there. Turn it into a space station. And when you actually break down what that would look like on the inside, the result is something no human being has ever experienced in space before. So, let's go inside. Here is something the glossy NASA photos never really show you. Life on the International Space Station is cramped. Genuinely, uncomfortably cramped. The ISS has been continuously inhabited for over 25 years. It is an astonishing achievement. But the habitable volume inside, all that space humanity has called home above Earth, is roughly equivalent to a 6-bedroom house. Except every wall, every ceiling, every floor is buried under cables, equipment racks, air ducts, and blinking panels. Astronauts sleep in compartments barely wide enough to stretch their arms. There is no real kitchen, no real common room, no real sense of space, and it cost $150 billion. So why is it like this? The answer comes down to one fundamental constraint: the rocket. The ISS was built in pieces. Over 40 separate launches, each module squeezed inside the nose cone of a rocket. And rockets have a fixed diameter. Everything that goes to space has to fit through that opening first. You end up designing rooms, corridors, and laboratories around the width of a tube. And that tube is never very wide. The result feels less like a research outpost and more like a very expensive submarine. But in the 1970s, NASA briefly escaped this problem. After the Apollo moon program ended, they had unused Saturn V rockets sitting around. Engineers looked at the upper stage fuel tank, 6.6 meters wide, nearly 18 meters long, and converted it into a space station called Skylab. The crew had so much room, they were literally cartwheeling through the cabin in microgravity. Nothing built since has matched that sense of open space. Starship is going to change that, because Starship doesn't have that constraint. Starship is not a normal rocket. The upper stage, the part that actually reaches orbit, is 9 meters in diameter and over 50 meters long. It is the largest single object ever launched into space. The old Space Shuttle orbiter looks small next to it. Most rockets are disposable. You use them once, they burn up. You build another one. Starship is designed to land, refuel, and fly again, over and over. That changes the economics of space entirely. But here is the idea that changes everything for space stations specifically. If Starship is reusable, and if you are only going to orbit and staying there, you do not need the fuel that fills the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle for a long journey. That fuel space becomes living space. One single Starship in orbit gives you more pressurized volume than most space stations ever built. And you did not have to assemble it piece by piece. It arrived whole. Of course, a ship designed to fly needs some modification before it becomes a home. The heat shield tiles come off. No re-entry needed. The wing flaps are removed. The engines at the base get replaced with a docking port for crew and cargo ships. Massive solar panels and cooling radiators get attached. And the robotic workforce SpaceX is developing, the same Optimus robots being tested in Tesla factories, handles the interior renovation in orbit. Is that last part speculative? Yes. But so was landing a rocket on a floating drone ship. Until it wasn't. Let's actually walk through this station. bottom to top. The lower decks, systems core. You enter through an airlock, and the first thing you notice is that it looks nothing like what you imagined. This is the utility level. Solar power storage, water processing, waste management, thermal control. Not glamorous, but critically, keeping all of this down here means the upper decks stay clean and open for people. The water system works like a closed loop. Every drop of sweat, exhaled moisture, and, yes, urine, gets captured and recycled back into drinking water. The same process splits some of that water into hydrogen and oxygen using electrolysis. The oxygen refreshes the air. Nothing is wasted. Everything cycles. The walls of this section are lined with water tanks, and that is deliberate. Water is one of the most effective radiation shields available. If a major solar storm hits, the crew retreats here and waits it out. The middle decks, work and life moving up. You hit the airlock deck, the exit point for spacewalks. Routine maintenance on the exterior requires going outside. But in a station this large, people will likely go out just to experience open space directly. That is a different thing entirely from watching it through a window. Next is the laboratory level. Experiment racks line the outer walls. Sealed glove boxes for handling sensitive biological or chemical materials. This is where the serious work happens. And the work matters more than most people realize. In microgravity, you can grow protein crystals with a purity impossible to achieve on Earth. Crystals used to develop new drugs. You can manufacture fiber optic cables with almost zero defects. You can study how biological systems behave without gravity, which tells us things about disease and aging that ground-based research cannot. The commercial case for orbital manufacturing is real, and it is growing above the lab, crew quarters, private rooms, windows. In a vessel 3 times the volume of the ISS, housing around 20 people instead of 6 or 7, personal space is actually personal. That matters enormously for long-duration missions. Psychological health breaks down faster than physical health in confined environments. Room to breathe, literally and figuratively, is not a luxury. It is a mission-critical requirement. Also on this level, the fitness center. 2 hours of exercise per day is not optional in space. Without it, muscles waste and bones lose density within weeks. The station is designed around this reality. The top decks, the reason. You came near the top, the station opens into communal space. A kitchen, or the closest thing to one in microgravity. Rehydrated meals, fresh vegetables from the onboard garden, a real table where people can sit together. Small things, enormous impact. A recreation level, space for games, virtual reality, creative work. Anything that keeps the mind from going flat during long rotations. And then, the nose cone. Floor-to-ceiling panoramic windows wrapping around the observation lounge at the very top of the station. A 360-degree view of Earth, the Moon, and the full depth of space beyond. From here, you watch the sun rise and set every 90 minutes as the planet turns beneath you at 28,000 kilometers per hour. Every astronaut who has ever looked down at Earth from orbit describes the same thing. A shift in perspective so complete, it feels like a different kind of seeing. In a station built like this, that experience is not a rare privilege. It is part of daily life. Here is the honest answer. Parts of this are further along than people think. Parts of this are harder than the renders suggest. Starship is real and it is flying. The scale is real. The reusability is real and improving with every test flight. SpaceX has already committed to using Starship for NASA's Artemis lunar lander. meaning the vehicle has serious institutional backing beyond internal ambition. The hard problems are also real. Orbital refueling, transferring propellant between two vehicles traveling at 28,000 kilometers per hour, has not been demonstrated at this scale. Connecting multiple starships in orbit to create a larger station has not been done. Long-term radiation management for a permanent crew remains an open engineering challenge. But compare the difficulty of a Starship space station against SpaceX's stated goals of a moon base and a city on Mars. On that scale, a station in low Earth orbit is the easy step. It would be strange not to do it. The ISS comes down around 2030. The window for what replaces it is already open. Space stations have always been constrained by the rockets that built them. Skylab showed us what happens when you remove that constraint, and we have been trying to get back to that feeling ever since. Starship might finally get us there. Not just back to that feeling, but far beyond it. Next time, we look at what happens when you take this same vehicle and point it at Mars, and why the journey itself might be the most challenging thing humanity has ever attempted. See you there.